okay, this thing went badly, what can we do in the future? So, like, I can't go into too much specifics about like Sarah's board cases, but for instance, if like, you know, somebody was underage drinking and got caught underage drinking, a possible sanction for them, which we've done this before actually. A sanction for them can be examining like alcohol and its effects on other campuses and like how it impacts the image of Greek life on other campuses. So it's an educational component of like, oh, like this could negatively affect like how I'm viewed in terms of being in the Greek community as a whole, and it affects negatively how the Greek community is perceived. And I think that is it that I have so far. But do you guys have any questions?
So a quick question I have is, when you talk about bad standing, for you, what does that mean?
Yeah, right. I probably should have gone into detail. Yeah, so you're only allowed to go to, like, you're not allowed to go to the fun events, so like mixers, formal, things like that. You can only go to like, you know, chapter rituals. So like the events that are, again, like vital to the functioning of our organization. Like mixers, even though they're fun, aren't necessarily vital. You can't hold an officer position, so you can't be on Sarah's board either. That's technically an officer position. You can't have a little, because, you know, the idea is that you don't want to perpetuate like a negative, like negativity to your little. You don't qualify for awards because awards are supposed to recognize the people who go above and beyond. So it's kind of in a gist.
Thank you.
Oh, and if you're in bad standing for 2 semesters in a row and you're going to be entering your third, then you have, like it gets progressively like worse. So if it's your third semester, that's like a significant portion of your time in the chapter. And if it's your third semester in a row of being in bad standing, then you're automatically deactivated. And if for some reason we decide not to automatically deactivate you, then we go back and re-examine the MEMs and think about like, okay, so we've chosen not to deactivate this person. What in here needs to be reevaluated? Like what in here needs to change? Maybe this isn't as functional as we thought.
Can you talk about how your chapter addresses social justice issues in the community?
Yeah, and that's something that we've actually struggled with, I think. So we don't do a whole lot. We try to tie social justice in a lot, like internally. So, you know, like when I talked about, you know, like safe zone training and things like that. I think the hope is that people kind of take what they've learned internally and like individually apply it at this point where we're at as a chapter. People take what they've learned individually and apply it to the community themselves is kind of where we're at. We also have our membership development program also kind of incorporates social justice a lot. It depends on the person and kind of what their goals are, but the idea is you make a set of goals, and one of those goals is kind of called a character goal, and it depends on person to person. So for somebody it could be about service, for other people it could be about cultural awareness, social justice, and then the idea is you go out and kind of like work toward your goal in the community. But that is something that we struggle with, that we want to work toward improving.
So, in your required reflections, are there any points where your chapter or groups in your chapter get together to reflect as more than just a sheet of paper?
Yeah, we do it sometimes. Like we do it sometimes when we go and do service as a group. So like Saturday of service last semester, for instance, we all had to meet and submit one single reflection for the entire group of sisters who went and did that activity. So it does happen like when we go as a group, but if you go and do individual service, then it's a survey thing that happens. Do you have anything to add?
Yeah, I mean, we have had a couple chapter discussions about reflecting on service in a more general sense, less so like a particular site, unless you're going as the group. We do it a lot with the service mixers, and especially work with the group we're partnering with. to complete a reflection together with them as well to see their perspective.
I feel like I have a question, but I can't figure out what it is yet. Rachel, over to you.
I guess kind of goes
Okay, well.
um,
So you had Respect Week, and you said people wrote letters to themselves. Do you have any examples about when your chapter supports some of the other women within the chapter during times of need or troubles?
Yeah, I mean, we have, it kind of depends. So like we have kind of our official things that we do at chapter where it's like, you know, writing, like you write like a note, and at the end the president reads them all out. And there's like Sister of the Week, Officer of the Week, and Bookworm of the Week, which is like if you did something special with scholarship. So in that sense, like people always write about other people in that context, and it's kind of nice for like, you know, if somebody's not necessarily feeling like appreciated as a person or as an officer. But again, like our chapter kind of does this a lot. we kind of take that. Like what you said, kind of like in a more like individualized approach. So Standards Board like is there to help. Like they also do mediation. So if there's like a conflict or like an issue that way, then you know they can go talk to Standards Board. Me as the VPMD, people kind of come and talk to me a lot about potential issues that they feel that they kind of worry about if they're in a time of need like that. But pretty much we kind of like put it on like individual sisters to be there and to be supportive, because if you're not being supportive, it's like why are you in the sisterhood if you're not if you're not there to support people. But again, like that's kind of why we had like a mental health discussion in terms of recognizing those, because that's not something that like any of us are qualified to handle ourselves, and like so it kind of knowing when in a conversation you should, you know, tell them to seek like a professional treatment.
I've asked 3.
You have.
I mean, come on, guys.
just out of curiosity, like, so you said that members who don't complete the right number of service hours, they have to make their own event. Do you have like any examples of events people have done?
Yeah. So again, like people haven't really been doing it a lot.
Yeah. No, I totally get that.
Yeah. But like somebody put together, like this semester, like somebody who didn't complete their service hours. I forget how much they were under. But they're having a couple hour long event to like make like these. What are they? The hats. That's what they are. I was like, are they? We had a pot litter event too, so I get them all confused.
Okay.
But yeah, like it's, you know, something like hats for heads.
Yeah.
Is what she's putting together.
Okay.
So they're kind of like things like that. That's like one example. Somebody else, you know, could definitely talk with the site, and we kind of are encouraging that more than kind of like individual projects that you do in the house.
Last semester, one of the girls set up a site for our Saturday of service, which the majority of our sisters went to with the help of the service chair, of course, but she was the spearhead on that project. There are some people who are trying to plan mixers to make up their service hours.
Yeah.
So was the goal then for the service events, like at least eventually for like other sisters to go in, even if they don't like need to, as like a
Yeah. Well, it's like that's kind of how they work. You know, they put on the event, but like other sisters go. Like it's not just them doing service.
Okay.
Yeah, it's like
They're
it's
hosting.
Yeah,
Gotcha.
it's pretty much like instead of the service chair is setting up this event for you to do service, like you're going to set up the event.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
I was wondering, for the people that haven't been making your requirement, which I think is like 8 hours, what are the reasons for people not meeting that minimum standard in terms of that community involvement and that service?
I think it depends on who you talk to. Like, I mean, for some,
just like general themes, and be like
Yeah.
precise. Or...
I mean, for some people honestly just think, oh, service isn't important. Like, I'm really busy. I do a lot of things in like my leadership position in this other organization. That should be counted as service, but it's not. So that's a common theme. There's a lot of, you know, I don't have time. I don't want to get up early.
I would pretty much agree with that. I think a lot of it is time management. which is something the minimum expectations are really pushing for that personal accountability.
Yeah.
So building off that, have you done anything within your chapter in terms of education around time management, or kind of, and I have a second question, but around time management?
Yeah, we've had presentations. With the new members, specifically, is what we did last year. We had Jen DeSantis come in. She's our faculty advisor, and kind of do something about time management. It was more related to like a scholarship context, but we've had several workshops like that in the past, not just for new members, but for everybody.
So outside time management, I guess, have you done anything in your culture or your chapter to kind of speak to or change the shift in the culture towards service being a value of the chapter? It seems like, 8 hours is something you can get if you want to do it.
Yeah.
So what does that look like in terms of kind of educating the chapter or trying to change that culture?
Yeah, I think it's a lot of, we sometimes have problems with sisters not buying in to things the organization has agreed are important on an individual level, and it's a smaller percentage of our chapter, and it's just really learning how to present the information in a way, and like framing it in a way that they get, and they understand and that they value personally, and it's a lot about the individual tailoring to get the few onto the boat with the rest of us.
Yeah, we had, I don't know if you're familiar with Bronwyn. She's an alum of ours who founded Lambda AMU when she was on campus. She graduated like 5 years ago now, I think. But she comes back all the time and has conversations about why is service important. Like we actually had her at our leadership retreat in the fall, lead a session about why is service important. And so we have conversations like that, and again like in the chapter. But I think really like what we're kind of pushing forward is that, because people kind of see, like at least in the past historically, people have kind of seen the citizenship pillar as service, and it's not only service. Like service is definitely a major component, but there are other things, cultural competency, culture of care, positive relationships, social justice that like people can connect with, even if they don't necessarily connect with service specifically. And then kind of the question there is like, how do we make service kind of fit into those things, and for people to see them as one and the same instead of two distinct, separate things.
So where in that like transition of mentality do you think people are?
At the beginning.
Start.
Yeah, we're starting. Like we started to actually have those conversations last year, which didn't happen before. And a lot of it was actually just kind of presenting. Like I was on Pinnacup chair last year, so a lot of like what I did was presenting, like, here's what the Pinnacup means, like here's what this is, and people were like, oh wait, service is not the only thing in citizenship. So conversation kind of started there once people started to kind of understand, and then discussions have kind of moved forward a little bit, but it's a culture shift, so it's a little bit slow. Really kind of what people really like in our chapter, at least I might be biased because I'm VP membership development, but people really do like to see things in the context of membership development. So when we're talking about like your character goal can be related to these things in citizenship that don't necessarily have to be directly related to service, people kind of understand that a little bit better in terms of like their own personal growth.
I would definitely agree that's very much what our chapter is more inclined to buy into.
You'd mentioned international student retention, and I was just wondering what you've done to address that, as well as how diversity is a value for your chapter.
Well, I think to answer the second point, when you do look at our chapter, like we are actually a pretty diverse group, which is great. I don't think people necessarily can always appreciate that. I don't think people necessarily view it as a positive or negative thing. It's just something that is. And with international students, like the issue, like I talked about this a little bit earlier, but the issue is a lot of like they don't they didn't grow up with a culture like that talked about Greek life. And even though like you learn that's like the cultural perception of what Greek life is and what Greek life actually is, like those aren't the same. Like you at least kind of have some perception of what is there. But the international students a lot of times don't get that at all. They don't grow up with that. So I know that this isn't just like an our chapter problem. I know it's like I was on Panhell too, and like we kind of talked about this, you know, being an issue community wide. But a lot of it again has been because our chapter responds to really like individualized personal conversations. It's been people sitting down with international students and kind of talking them through like exactly what like expectations are, why they're important. But we did just recently, you know, reach out to other resources on campus and, you know, had conversations with them. But I think it starts at the officer level in terms of our new member educator knowing how to have those conversations, which she didn't before, so that's good. And then kind of moving forward from there to the rest of the chapter.
In addition, we're also trying to take it all the way back to recruitment so that we can understand as a chapter how to sell who we are to, for example, the international student population. You can't use this. You can't say what Greek life is the same way because there's that cultural barrier, and you know, having our sisters begin to really understand that the barrier exists and they need to be aware of it and present it in a very honest light. Because Greek life is more than just a club. There's a commitment to it, a lot of time commitment. And if you say, oh, it's not really that much, because you don't think it is, somebody else could. So really having our sisters understand that all the way back to recruitment.
Anything else?
Okay.
Do you have anything else for us?
I think that we covered it.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Thank you.
All right, thank you very much.